Alright, y'all know the drill. New patch, new character, so it's time to take a look at where they've landed on the tier list. But this tier list has gone through some major changes. As you can see here, we have a bunch of characters dropping. The meta has basically gone on long enough now that there's less room at the top sections up here at tier 0 and tier 0.5, tier 1, you see what I'm saying here. So there's been some movement, and as some of these top tier characters move down, that means these mid tier characters and low tier characters have to drop down as well. In fact, they've included now a tier 4, a whole entire new tier, in order to make room for these shifts. So let's get started here at the top. And real quick, before I get going too much further, I do want to point out there is a little bit of an issue with the weapon situation for Anby, just like we saw with Evelyn and Miyabi. It's an unfortunate case. We will be covering this a little bit further in the video. I just wanted to let you guys know about this right now in the early stage of the video so that you guys don't necessarily skip off the video. But real quick, if you like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help out. We're making that push towards 10K, and it'll be the first milestone for the channel. We're here again at pridewin.gg, taking a look at the most trusted tier list in the Zenless Zone Zero community, at least on the EN side of things, right? We're taking a look at the Shield Defense tier list for patch 1.6 part 1, and of course we're here mainly because of Silver Anby, who landed here at tier 0.5, a very strong placement, and I think she's probably going to end up being like the strongest. Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna say it. She's the strongest electric style DPS in the game right now, and she might even be like maybe the third best DPS in the game, because we have Miyabi here. Of course, she's just solidified herself here at tier 0. She's an absolute monster. And Evelyn here, if you can get her combos to work properly, basically that's why she has the expert tag here. If her combos work properly, if you play her well, she can actually operate like a tier 0. But even if you're not doing that, she still lands here at a 0.5, a very respectable number. And so in theory, as far as Pridewin is concerned, they're going to consider her to basically be the second best character in the game. And we have Silver Anby here, in my opinion, rather easy to use. And I think she's going to get stronger because one of the characters, she has an aftershock mechanic, by the way, in case you guys didn't know about that, because she is brand new, right? She has an aftershock mechanic. She has a new drive set in the game now, which you guys can go farm if you guys wanted to farm out that new set. And she has Pulchra in the game now, and she also is an aftershock character, so she's kind of like the buffer for Anby right now. And that's a 4-star character, or I guess you could say it's an A rank character that's buffing a 5-star. Think about it for a second. When Silver Anby gets a 5-star buffer, her performance is going to be a lot stronger as a result of that. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, maybe in part 2 of patch 1.6. In fact, when you look at the wording for why some of the changes were made to this list as far as dropping characters down, bumping these characters down, 3 characters were named. After the release of Miyabi, Evelyn, and now Silver Anby or S0 Anby, it's clear the bar for damage dealers has been set higher. To reflect this reality, we've had to adjust the rating of some older damage dealers down the tier list. So I think that should be a strong indicator that, that's basically the 3 strongest damage dealers in the eyes of Pridewin, although that wasn't the wording that they chose. That's basically the takeaway that, at least I'm reading into when I read that changelog. And after playing her myself, I gotta say that she is an absolute unit. And again, when you have an M6 Pulchra behind her, she's really strong, and her potential will only go up more when she gets a 5-star aftershock buffer. We do have Xingyu in the game right now, but unfortunately, you don't have that aftershock synergy. She's kind of like a fill-in. Now, don't get me wrong, she could potentially outperform a Pulchra. I guess it depends on the situation, but sometimes different domains will have different things that characters will excel in. Maybe Xingyi will be able to fill that role, but I do feel like that the sky's the limit for Silver Anby, and she may be able to even move maybe up above an Evelyn if she does get a synergy with a 5-star aftershock buffer someday. And of course, Pridewin does have a team and rotation section here, and let's go ahead and take a look at it. For a stun-based team, you do see Pulchra and you do see Xingyi here for the stunner, or the hybrid sort of sub-DPS slot here for the Silver Anby team with Astra Yao, or maybe Lucy or Nicole, obviously Astra Yao being the stronger unit there. But if you do build this team, you do have Lucy and Nicole as an option. If, let's say, for whatever reason, you don't have Astra Yao. If you don't have Astra Yao, my condolences. She's an absolute monster. When we come down here to the double support team, this is kind of like a hyper carry team behind the Anby, because you're going to be using the Caesar, King, and the Astra 5-star supportive sustainability characters, both of them on the same team behind the soldier Anby, which obviously, how could you go wrong with that? There's such strong characters that they could hyper carry practically anyone, right? However, if you do this, you are leaving yourself with your other team practically naked, meaning that you're not going to have one of these 5-star supportive sustainability characters for that other team. You're going to have to use a 4-star like a Lucy or a Nicole or a Sakaku or whoever you have for your other team as a 4-star, and that kind of limits you as far as team building for 2 different teams. And when we come down here to a free-to-play team option here, you do see the Pulchra, of course. Although she is newer, she's harder to get all the way to M6, so not everyone might be able to do this on day 1, but she is a very, very strong option for a lot of Anby teams, right? And of course, the A-rank Anby, the old Anby, the Anby that some people actually like the design of the old Anby more than the new Anby. That might be a hot take for some. I'm kind of impartial. I like them both, but it is what it is, and she is, at the end of the day, a stunner that could be used with the new Anby. It's facts. And of course, for this situation, you could have a Lucy. This is a free-to-play team after all. You could use somebody else instead of Lucy. Maybe you could use the Astra Yao. But this is supposed to be a free-to-play team, so keep that in mind. This might not be the most... Obviously, it's not the most optimized free-to-play team, because some of you might have a 5-star you could use here instead. And then you do have a Nicole here as a sort of other option if you're not going to want to use the Lucy. Now, again, we are going to talk about the weapon situation in just a second here. I just wanted to get some stuff out of the way, like this Shadow Harmony. This is the 4-piece new set that you can use on Anby. It just dropped alongside her. This is essentially her set. You want to be farming this if you can. You can use Thunder Metal, though. For example, it might take you some time to farm out some good Shadow Harmony pieces. There's nothing wrong with using the Thunder Metal set right now, because as you can see, it's a 98.43 in comparison to her best in slot set. And something to keep in mind, if you have totally ass Shadow Harmony pieces, right, that is worse than having really, really good Thunder Metal pieces. Just ignore this percentage here, because they're basically comparing like very similar stat pieces to each other, and if they have similar stats, then this Shadow Harmony is better. But if you have already really good farmed out Thunder Metal pieces, just use this until you potentially farm out something better. You may even decide, hey, I'm just gonna, maybe farm out other characters and not have to need to farm out another Thunder Metal set, depending on what you have going on here. And as far as Bang Boos are concerned, you can see here Night Boo has which gives you a bunch of energy. However, it's event locked, so some of you might not be able to get this. Butler Boo, which also gives you energy, and everyone should be able to get this if they chose this in the Bang Boo selector. You have Plug Boo, Electro Boo when playing with Xing Yi, and you also have Brawler Boo for just a strong attack agent synergy. This is really good for maybe like a dual DPS team, or just if you don't have maybe Butler Boo or something like that, or Night Boo, for example. Now let's talk about the weapon situation with Silver Anby. This is her signature weapon, Severed Innocent. The crit damage is increased by 30 all the way up to 48%. When the equipper lands a hit with a basic attack, special attack, or aftershock, they gain 1 stack of a buff. Each stack increases the equipper's crit damage by an additional 10 to 16%, stacking up to 13 times. The effect lasts for 30 seconds, with each stack duration calculated separately and can only be triggered once per use of a skill with all 3 stacks. The equipper's electric damage increases by 20 all the way up to 32%. It has a base attack at level 60 of 713 and crit damage at level 60 of 48%. This is an absolute monster of a weapon. And obviously with a weapon like this, if you have this weapon, you want to build a ton of crit rate on her because it gives you a ton of crit damage. So you want to land your crits so that the crit damage actually matters. Your crit damage might as well be 0 if you don't have enough crit rate to land your crits. Sadly, if you aren't using this signature weapon, the fall off in damage is insane. That doesn't mean she's going to be a bad character. That doesn't mean she's not going to deal damage, but there is a serious boost that you get from having her signature compared to quite literally everything else. The next best thing Coming in here at 86.63% of what her signature could do is the Hailstorm Shrine. However, if you haven't been pulling signatures, if you're maybe more casual or more free to play and you have to use, let's say, an A rank weapon, even at S5, the Marcado Desire comes in at 78.1% of, or sorry, 78.01% of what her signature can provide you, which is a massive drop off, as I'm sure you guys are aware. Starlight Engine, for example, has a 77.89% damage out of what her signature could do. That is a massive fall off, and some people might feel some FOMO off of that, but that's kind of been the case lately. Evelyn had a similar problem to this, Miyabi had a similar problem to this, and you might be seeing here the Brimstone, which has been an absolute unit of a weapon for a lot of damage dealing characters since 1.0. But some of these newer characters coming out, it's actually not even competing with some of the S5 A rank weapons here. 74.92%. That is basically less. That's less than a quarter. That's 3/4, right, of what the signature weapon could do. That's an insane fall off, right? And that's the last weapon even on this list, bro. And which is fair, because Starlight Engine, you could farm this up and whatnot. Like you can get other weapons here, like as a free to play, for example. But don't be alarmed. Don't feel like your character is not going to perform if you don't have the signature. It isn't necessary. I just wanted to point that out, that if you are one of those players that likes to pull signatures and like to really invest into one character, her signature is an absolute beast of a weapon. But she's easy to use. You don't actually have to have her new drive set. You don't actually have to have the new weapon. It's actually totally fine. She is still going to be a good option for you, especially since a 4-star came into the game, and everybody gets a free copy of Pulchra if you just play one of the events. And she's on the same banner as Anby, so you are likely going to be able to get plenty of copies of Pulchra if you wanted to kind of go a more free-to-play route, if that's the choice you had to make. Now let's talk about some of these changes. So as you see, we have characters dropping down to make room for some of these other characters to come into these top slots. You see a character like Jane Doe dropping down. You see a character like Zhu Yuan dropping down. That's because they haven't been performing as well in the recent Shiyu defenses, right? That's just the way it goes. There's a lot of shifting because they want to cater to the new characters. It makes sense when they're catering to these new characters that some of these other characters aren't performing quite as well. Even though Zhu Yuan is actually a really good synergy for Astra Yao, and Astra Yao did come out into the game recently. They're both other characters. Just because Astra Yao is an ethnic character doesn't necessarily mean Zhu Yuan is the best pick for that team, right? There's other characters like Miyabi, for example, that work well with Astra Yao. Astra Yao basically just works on basically any team. She's an absolute monster, right? You also see Evelyn dropping down, which I think everyone was expecting this. She was the first character to ever come out in the game, and she's just been absolutely power crept by somebody like Miyabi. Everybody got power crept by Miyabi, right, to be fair, but she's the same element as Miyabi, and she's just suffering from the 1.0 debuff, I guess you could say, being one of the earliest premium characters to come out in the game, right? And don't be alarmed by the fact that she's on the same tier as somebody like Anby. Look at the middle column and the left column and the right column like they are completely different lists, okay? The tiers are like, this is essentially a DPS tier list. This is essentially a stun tier list and a support tier list. Don't look at these two next to each other and think that they're as valuable as each other, for example. It doesn't exactly work like that. But oof, we continue to see these DPS characters falling down because to make room for, it's mostly the DPS characters that are seeing a lot of movement on the list because they needed to make room at the top for a lot of these other characters that are coming into the game. So you see a character like Harumasa come down, you see Soldier 11 come down, which is kind of funny because of the lore, right? So, yeah, right. Silver Anby and Soldier 11 on the same team, you know, like are like in the same faction, I guess you could say. It's just kind of funny to see that drop. But they aren't performing as well. It's just facts. I mean, dude, Soldier 11 has to compete with Evelyn. That's, bro, good luck, man. Like, good luck, bro. That's gonna be tough. So you see a lot of these characters dropping down, and I support this decision. I think this was something that we could have even done before this, to be perfectly honest with you. You see Grace dropping down. You see Nekomata dropping down. I don't care if I get hate for this. I can't stand this character. I pulled this. I lost a 50-50 and got Nakomata, and I almost quit the game. Like I can't stand her. I don't know what it is. It's not a furry thing. It's not even a Neko thing. I just can't. I just think she's kind of annoying. Okay, flame me if you want. It's just my opinion. I find her to just be annoying from the main story where she was there. And let's move on. Anton. Anton gets dropped down to the lowest tier because of course he does. And then you have Corin also getting dropped down to the lowest tier because of course she does. Because there's just other characters that are better. These are just facts. Ben getting dropped down all the way. Yeah, sure, there might be teams that he can work on, but like that doesn't mean he deserves to be like up here with some of the other better characters than him on this list. Seth getting dropped down as well, and then you have Rena getting dropped down as well, which is kind of interesting because you do see an electric character being brought into the game. So in theory, you'd think that this could actually work, but there's actually better synergies with even Lucy. Lucy is actually a better supporter for Soldier Zero than Rena, which is kind of a funny thing because they're on the same element. But it just because they're the same element doesn't mean they have the same synergy and that the synergies don't work as well, right? Tsukaku has already been dropped down from previous times. She's just a little bit slower, right? There's ways that you can cancel certain abilities that she has, but unfortunately that isn't necessarily enough. And like, I don't know if people are going to necessarily give her an expert tag just because you can kind of cancel certain animations that she has to try to make her faster or better. You know, you just try to get Lycan, bro, because you do have that 300 selector, so you could pick Lycan from that 300 selector. He does pair with Miyabi, so that keeps his value up, for example. You do have Kaleda, too, which, you know, pairs really well with Evelyn, so there's value in these two characters. Those are probably the two that I would choose if I was you guys in the modern era, and that's the tier list. That's Anby, that's your mom. If you guys like this kind of stuff, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.